exercising authority. It means being a person in power. It means having people under you. And to this world, greatness is an office with a view. Greatness means having a team of secretaries who answer your every call. It means dozens of hundreds of people who do what you say when you say it. They cling to every decision you make and inwardly wish to be where you are. It means having the biggest house and the fastest car and the smartest kids and the best schools and every advantage that life has to offer. This world says that greatness means doing whatever you have to whoever you have to do it to, in order to get to the top and stay on the top. Think about the presidential race. They will do or say anything to become president. And then after their 4 years are up, they'll do or say anything to be reelected. Because when you get a taste of power, it's hard to let go. Unfortunately, this worldly view of success and greatness has poured into the church. And I have to confess this morning that there's a lot of pastors that enter into ministry because they believe that being a pastor will give them this kind of authority and greatness they desire their whole life. These are the guys always seeking the bigger pulpit and the bigger salary. And it doesn't stop there. Congregations fall for this false definition of greatness, thinking that their church has to have the greatest building and the greatest programs and the greatest music and the greatest preaching and the greatest crowd. But let me tell you something. Carnal and immature Christians will flock to whatever they deem is the greatest church.
Right.
Because they want to feel like they are a part of something great. People have left this church because we're too small. Because we don't have enough things going on. Because we don't have the greatest this, or the greatest that, the greatest building. See, the problem is with a lot of Christians, they want to be able to brag about being a member of a certain church.
Right.
They have no desire to invest in the kingdom of God. They just want to be able to tell people, well, I go to such and such church, or such so-and-so preachers, or so-and-so pastors. But who cares? Jesus says, I sure don't. They already got 10,000 people there. What's your one? You just go and sit in the crowd is doing nothing for the kingdom. That's why it breaks my heart. And Dad, we've talked about this too, is we've seen a handful, maybe more than a handful of men come to this church who said they desired to be used by God, come, be given every opportunity to serve God, and leave.
Yes, sir.
And go do nothing. Some I've seen fall back into the world. Some I've seen just attending church and not serving anymore. Some are not going to church at all. And some have just pulled a Demas and they're just back out full-fledged in the world. And in a few months, in the time period, they came here saying, you know what? I want to serve God. I want to serve the church. I surrender. I want to do this. I want to do that. Man, from guys in their 60s and 70s down to guys in 12, 13, 14, 15, all at this church. Or they went and gone and did their own thing. Because they cannot be under authority, they have to be in authority. They can't listen to preaching, they got to be the preacher. They can't listen to teaching, they got to be the teacher. They can't listen to singer, they got to be the singer. They can't listen to singing, they have to be the one singing. They can't be told what to do, they have to be telling you what to do. God says that that's your attitude, go.
Yeah.
Go. Go plant your church, go start your ministry, go build your whatever on pride and see how far it goes.
That's right.
But it breaks my heart to see guys do that who have potential, and you can see God, and man, if they would just lose themselves, God would really use. But this sense of greatness and who they think they are keeps them from being used by God in a great way. The problem with this kind of greatness is this, with worldly greatness, it never lasts. Being great in the world never satisfies. Someone else will always eventually get the job. or inherit the money, or take over the business, or steal the respect that used to belong to you. And even when you think you've met the world's definition of greatness, it'll never be enough. How fast do we throw over celebrities and stars and all these people? I mean, we'll throw them out just like that. There will always be another accomplishment to obtain, more money to make, and more trophies to place in your cabinet. But Jesus uses two words to tell us what true greatness is all about. First, he said, you must be a servant. Did you know that the word here in the Greek is the same word that translates deacon? So if some guy, I'm a deacon in my church. Good, you're the best servant they got. You're the best slave of the church. That's what deacon means. It means slave. It means servant. It is not some arrogant place of authority or power. You are nothing in the church but a servant. We've elevated in the church a deacon of power and authority. In Jesus' mind, in the mind of the early church, a deacon was nothing. You know what they did? They set up tables and they put up chairs. They mopped the toilets and they greeted visitors that came in and out. They had no say in how the church was ran, or how business was ran, or what was done. They just put up tables and chairs so the people in authority could make those decisions. But how we have warped the position of deacon in the church. And I have seen men in the church wear it as a badge of honor. And how dare you? You know who you're talking to? I'm the head deacon. Well, good. You're the first servant. You're the first slave. So that means when the toilet needs cleaned, you're the first one to be in there. The enemy, our idea of greatness has been so shifted. Even in the church. A deacon is one who serves. The world says that greatness is found in being served. That's why we love restaurants. I want someone to make my food. I want someone to bring me my food. I want someone to fill my tea glass. And if she doesn't do it fast enough, guess what? She ain't making no money. Yeah. Think about how we treat our servers. They're people that have bad days just like you. How do you act at work when you're having a bad day? Like a butt. Like a big butt. And you make everybody else suffer around you until someone puts you in check, or your boss sends you home for being a butt. And then you go to a restaurant, and this little old girl, single mom, maybe single dad, maybe somebody just barely trying to make it, having a bad day, forgets to fill up your glass, and you're some so-called Christian after church, headed to have dinner. You know what? Most employees that work at restaurants say they hate Sunday lunch crowds. They are the rudest and stingiest out of everybody in the whole week. And they don't fill it up, and you know what? You tempt them 50 cents. No wonder the world hates Christians, or the idea of what a Christian is. Because we look at, even Christians, we got this idea, I know it's their job, but first they're people. They're not less than you because they bring your food. Jesus said, I came to do what? Serve. Jesus said, I'm going to wash your feet. I'm not asking you to wash mine, I'll wash yours. So the next time you're at a restaurant, your waitress is not doing a very good job. You know what? You just might say, what's your name? All right, I'm going to pray for you. You seem like you're having a rough time, and you tip them better than you would anybody else, and you leave giving glory to Jesus, because it's not about you being served. It's not about you running to their manager and going, man, that is the worst person in the whole planet. Well, maybe you're not that easy to put up with either. Right. And I understand there's jobs and ways they got to perform, but you know what? Sometimes we need to have a mentality. Maybe they're having a bad day. Or maybe they are just a jerk that needs Jesus. Yeah. Amen. And Jesus sent you there to serve them, not to be served by them. I'm not telling you this is every case every time. I'm telling you to start having your mind set that could be a possibility.
That's good.
And the other key word God uses is slave, doulios, which means a person whose sole interest is the will of the master. Doulios? Yep, doulios. Greatness for the Christian is when our first interest becomes subservient to God's only interest. Greatness is measured by obedience and love and giving and sacrifice and service for God and for others. The greatest example of true greatness is found in the cross of Jesus Christ. You will never get greater than the cross. I had you underline the word for. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Jesus said that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Verse 28. You guys want to know what that word for means? It means in place of. So if you read it this way, it says that Jesus said the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom in place of many. So that means that if you're a Christian here this morning, Jesus died as a ransom in place of you, of me, in place of. You know what? I can't think of anyone serving me better than dying in my place. Jesus says, I lay down my life as creator for the creation. Thank God for us that Jesus' pride didn't step in.
That's right.
Treat us like we treat our waiters or people that we deem less than us. Thank God Jesus doesn't treat us that way. We would have never been saved. What if Jesus acted like you? What if he acted like me? We wouldn't have been here. The ransom had to be paid. A ransom is a price paid for the freedom of one held captive. You and I were held captive to sin, and the ransom had to be paid in order for us to be set free. And that ransom required every drop of the blood of Jesus. And he paid that price for you, and he paid that price for me. And some of us probably need to go home today and seriously evaluate how we have defined greatness in our own lives. True greatness is hindered by pride, characterized by service, and lastly, it is practiced by giving. You want to say you're a follower of Jesus? You want to say you're great in the kingdom? How good is your giving? How great is your giving? It's hindered by pride, characterized by service, but it's practiced by giving. Practiced by giving. We're a small church. A lot of us have just basic jobs. We live paycheck to paycheck. There ain't a rich person in this room. There's not a rich member in this church. But by God's grace and God's glory, he's always found a way to meet our needs.
Amen.
Thank you, Jesus.
But that does not negate, you waiting on God to perform a miracle does not negate your responsibility to obey.
Come on.
Just because God will show up and do something miraculous doesn't rob us of our job of being obedient, of giving. Time, talents, and treasures.
Yes.
Times and talents and treasures. In other words, when we emphasize giving over getting and serving over being served, we become great in the eyes of God. In this open-handed willingness to help those in need, Jesus wanted to teach his disciples. And Jesus knew well that the best sermon in all of life is the sermon we live. Jesus is not a guy who just preached something and lived a different way. He practiced what he preached. The Bible records that Jesus says, you know what? I can't lay down my life. If you want to be the greatest, you got to be the last. If you want to be much of my kingdom, you have to serve and not worry about being served. And you know what happened? The very next town they entered to, that was put to the test. Here's two blind guys saying, Jesus, heal us. We're blind. Have mercy on us. And Jesus could have walked right past them. Jesus could have not even given them a thought. But you know what? He stopped and served them. He stopped and helped them. He stopped and did something for them. Here's the thing, though. They're crying out in verse 31, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us. No one noticed him. Actually, in fact, the Bible says they rebuked him. They told him to shut up. You're getting on our nerves. Jesus didn't come here for you. But they know Jesus come here for.
Amen.
That was Jesus' whole point. Then who did I come here for? If I did not come for them, who did I come for? He said, in fact, they would have preferred that he simply look the other way and pretend they were not there. But to the disciples, these men were a nuisance to be avoided, but not to Jesus. These men may have been blind physically, but I think they have better spiritual insight than most of us in this room. It was for mercy they begged. A man convicted of a heinous crime before a righteous judge does not demand his rights. He pleads for mercy. That is what exactly these two men did. And I like what Matthew says in verse 32. He says, Jesus stood still. Jesus was on his way to Calvary. Nothing could stop him. Nothing could turn him away from the cross. But when two men cried for mercy, Jesus stood still. Even today, when sinners ask for mercy, Jesus stands still and waits. Jesus wanted to show his disciples that true greatness is not about getting, but about giving. But what better way to do so than to stop and give these two the gift of sight? Verse 34 says that Jesus took his open hands and touched their eyes and healed them. Let me ask you a question. Did Jesus need to touch them to heal them?
No, sir.
The Bible recorded a couple other times that he just said the word and they were healed. He just said the word and they could see. So Jesus physically did not have to touch them to heal them, did he? No, he didn't. So why? Why in this instance, why in this context, why in this setting touch them? Here we go. He didn't have to touch them. But this time, he wanted the disciples to see that touching hurting people was a part of what true greatness is all about. Because you know what, guys? What we do to hurting people sometimes, and I've been guilty of it too, is I'll pray for you. Let me know if you need anything, because I'm too busy for you right now, so you just let me know if you need something. You know what Jesus said? He didn't just walk by and go, all right, boys, be healed. He didn't walk by and go, you know what? I'll catch you on my way out. He didn't just walk by and say, well, I heard your prayer request, so I'll put you on the roll in church. The Bible says he stopped. He stood still and he touched them. Meaning he personally got involved in their lives. And was personally involved in a hurting person's problem. That teaches you and I that you know what? There are times when it's out of our control. But there are times when God will use us to physically help people change their lives. Get involved. Jesus didn't have to touch them, but he was teaching his disciples, man, sometimes dig in. Get involved. Grab somebody and help them. You've been helped. It's your turn to help. It means that we give ourselves, that God might use us to touch a world that is lost and dying without Jesus Christ. I'm going to close with this story. I read this past week the story of the very first Baptist missionary to China. This was the very first Baptist missionary that's ever went to China. I didn't know this. And in September of 1835, Mr. John Lewis Shuck was attending his church when they had a special offering to support foreign missions. God spoke to Shuck and revealed to him that he wanted him to serve as a missionary to the people of China. No one had ever gone to China, ever. And in the middle of one of the services just like this, God told him, you're the one. Go home, pack your bags, you're heading to China to tell people about me. Talk about a Sunday service that changes your life. Guys, you know what? I'm praying and begging God will still speak that way in our churches. Sure. That God will still look down and, or as we humbly ask him to be, and reach down to the depths of your heart and says, you know what? I want to use you. Maybe not to China, but just maybe start in your city. Start your home. Start with your spouse. Start somewhere. But this guy, that God wanted to serve as a missionary to the people of China. So as the offering for the foreign missions was collected that day, he scribbled a brief message on the piece of paper. And while others were dropping in large dollar amounts and bills and coins, he dropped the piece of paper in the collection plate as it was passed by. Can you imagine the looks that guy got?
Yes.
Here's my 100, here's my 50, here's my big bills, and he gets to that guy and he drops in a piece of notebook paper. What a cheapskate. What a jerk. What do you think this is, a joke? What is this, a game? After the service, while the money was being counted, a note was discovered that simply read, myself. And was signed, John Lewis Shipk. That is the offering that God is asking from every one of us. See, they passed the plate and said, give your best. And he said, I'll give you myself. That's the greatest gift to a church. Not your money. Because if we get you, you get that already. Tithing for the Christian is not an obligation. It is a joy. I can't afford to give. As a Christian, you cannot afford not to give. Some of us need to just consider, I haven't given my tithes because God doesn't have me. I don't give God my time because God doesn't have me. I don't give God anything because God doesn't have any of me. I keep going to church and getting, and I'm not really liking what I'm getting, but I'm not giving anything. You'll get what you give. If you come to church expecting a lot, guess what you'll get out of church? A lot. If you come to church expecting very little, guess what you're going to get out of church? Very little. If you come to God expecting nothing, guess what you're going to get from God?
That's right.
Nothing. But if you come fully expecting, God will show up in ways you and I have never dreamed.
Yes.
Right.
And if you withhold, God will withhold. But if you give yourself completely, God says, I will give myself. God wants all of you. He gave you all of Him already.
That's right.
He says, don't worry about if you're going to die for me. You need to worry every day if you're going to live for me.
Yes.
The big question isn't, would you die for Jesus or someone coming with a gun? No, the big question is, tomorrow when you wake up and spend Labor Day and Tuesday when you get up and go back to work, and maybe tonight coming back to Sunday, will you live for Him? Will you live for Him? The true person, the true Christian. He wants us to give ourselves. He wants your heart. He wants your soul. He wants your life. And here's the cool thing about God. He doesn't take those things by force. It must be given freely. It must be an offering from you to Him. That is where we must decide. It is when we give ourselves that we experience the greatness it's truly about. Perhaps you need to admit to God today that in a vain attempt to be great by this world's standards, you failed to see what greatness is all about. Maybe you simply need to tell God, take all my weak accomplishments, take all my fancy titles, take all my worldly honors, and make me great in your kingdom. That is when your life becomes the greatest sermon ever preached. See, the greatest sermon is not about what I preach to you. The greatest sermon will be what you do when you leave here. The greatest sermon will be your life. Live for God's glory. And just like every sermon preached, there's good points, low points, high points, boring parts, exciting parts. But it all fits together to make one sermon. Your life is a sermon. What are you preaching? Who are you preaching? You preaching you or you preaching Jesus? You preaching your agenda or the kingdom's agenda? Are you giving or are you taking? I can't decide that for you. But I can tell you this, the Bible said that Jesus came as a giving him our life, by giving him our sin. And choosing from this day forward to follow Jesus as Lord and Savior. It doesn't matter where you sit in the kingdom. The great part about being there is just being in the kingdom. Getting a seat at all. The Bible says that if you will put your faith and trust in Jesus, that one of these days, as Richard is most excited about in all the world, is the big feast. He is so excited about the great feast. He is ready for dinner with Jesus. But you know what? The Bible guarantees, if you have your faith and trust in Jesus, you put your reservations in, and there's a seat waiting for you. There's a seat waiting for you. If you're worried about where you sit, you better be worried about where you're going to sit for eternity. That's the most important place, the most important decision. Are you sitting with Jesus in a place called heaven? Or are you standing alone in a place called heaven? That's your options. Jesus says, come and sit with me. Give me your sin. Give me your life. I'll live through you and show you what greatness is all about. Greatness is in Jesus. Greatness is not in me and you. The only great thing about us is Jesus lives in us and through us. As we close, if God and you are honest about your heart this morning, spiritually, how great are you? How great are you spiritually? Are you hindered by pride? Are you characterized by service? Do people know you as a serving person? Are you shaped by your giving? Do people know you as a giver or a taker? Are you a giver or a taker? Do you serve or you live life to be served? And are you humble or prideful? Those three are the way that God sees